Hello, everyone. Good day. I am Dr. Sarah Oloto. Um, it's good to see everyone dialing in for another Health Hour session with the Caribbean and African Health Network. So it would be nice to know where everyone is joining in from. I'm currently in Berkshire in the UK. The weather is nice and sunny for now. So I would encourage everyone to use the chat box as an engage interactive session. So please share your questions and thoughts in the chat box. We would also have a Q&A session at the end. Um, yeah, so let's dive into it. Today we're joining in. We're going to discuss a very important topic today, and Dr. Ayo, who is a transformational mindset coach and entrepreneur. He has a wealth of experience in stress management and burnout. He'll be discussing resilience and suicide prevention, breaking the silence. Like I said, it's a very important issue, especially in recent times, how suicide rates have increased. Lots of depression, loneliness, isolation. Um, Even given the recent COVID pandemic that um, also contributed to this issue. And obviously, there are different aspects to tackling it. There's the biopsychosocial aspects, which is biological basis, psychological and social components to which we can help deal with this issue. But Dr. Ayo would dive in depth and discuss and share knowledge on this topic. I can see everyone is putting in the chat box. Some people are calling in from Manchester, Salford, mostly. Um, yeah, welcome, welcome. So I'll hand over to Dr. Aya now so we can dive right into it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sarah. Thank you for that warm welcome. And, welcome to everybody to the Can't Health Hour. It's me again. Sorry. We're going to talk to you about something that's really, really important. And, Dr. Sarah has mentioned that it's a big issue. It's a big issue. And it would be difficult for us to talk about every single thing that pertains to resilience and suicide prevention today. So we're going to do a quick overview from my point of view. We're not going to be able to be comprehensive and talk about every single thing, but I would encourage you to put your questions in the chat. And if we can't address it today, then we can try and address it at a later stage. And yes, let's get going. Let me share my screen. And if everybody can let me know if you can see my screen. Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so resilience and suicide prevention. So this normally when I do talks for the Khan Black Health Hour, I have all the information in my mind and I use the slides as an aid memoir, but I've got some notes here. So if you see me looking to my right, it's such an important issue. I wanted to make sure that I get all the things right because there's a lot of stigma, there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of angst about this. And I wanted to do it in a respectful manner and try and make sure that we have a proper discourse about it. I'm hoping to leave enough time for questions at the end, and I'm going to go through it as quickly as I can. Right. So, hang on. So, who am I? Just in case you didn't know, I am a number of things. So, I am a Christian, I am a husband, I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm an author, I am a coach, I'm a musician, I'm a public speaker, I'm a stroke survivor, and as a hobby, I'm an acute medicine consultant working in Merseyside. So, I've brought all of myself to this presentation because I think when it comes to talk conversations about mental health and all these things, all of ourselves are impacted by the conversation. And in case you didn't realize, I am Black. That's relevant. I always wanted to start these conversations with thank you. Thank you for those of you who are watching live and those of you who have taken the time to invest in yourself to find out more about this issue, grow. Thank you to Khan for creating a platform for these necessary conversation, and in particular this difficult conversation. So thank you everybody for listening. Thank you, Khan, for creating the platform. It's important. So because of what the subject matter, for some people it might be triggering, and I want to say that from the beginning. I'm going to do my best again to deal with everything in a compassionate, respectful manner. And I hope you understand that that's the vein that I'm coming from. So if I challenge or say anything, it's with the understanding that I am your brother, I'm your uncle, I'm your nephew. That's my heart. And if this is difficult for you, especially if you're listening to the recording, maybe you want to pause it, take a breath, and come back and listen to it later. Okay, so when I was a junior doctor, one of the things that I was told is, you need to check the obs, because observations are the things that help us figure out how well or unwell is a patient from an objective point of view. We use something in hospitals called the News 2 score, which is a objective measure of how unwell is this patient. Generally, people who are unwell have a high news score, and people who are well have a low news score. Why is it relevant? Because in our communities, we probably don't do that. We don't check on each other. We don't check the obs. We don't look into specifically the areas about health and in when it comes to mental health. We don't do that. So in this talk, in this conversation, I hope to raise awareness about the issue. I'm going to talk specifically about resilience, and I'm going to talk about suicide and suicide prevention. And again, I would encourage you, if you have any questions about anything that I have said or any comments, please put them in the chat, because this is supposed to be a two-way thing. And hopefully at the end of it, we will address everything that everybody says. If you're listening and you know somebody who would be interested in this conversation, send them the link, send them the YouTube link, or send them the Zoom link and say, log on now. We just started. So what does one of the things I also did when I went to medical school is we were encouraged to define terms, because especially in society we all throw certain terms around and we don't necessarily understand that if I say something, you might not be thinking about what I am saying. So I'm going to talk about some terms. When I use them, you know what I mean. What does the term mental health mean? So it's a person's condition with regard to their psychological, emotional well-being. We're used to the concept of physical health. And when we say physical health, we know that somebody can have good and bad physical health. So similarly, somebody can have good and bad mental health, because sometimes I hear people say mental health, and what they mean is mental illness or mental health issues, which is a different thing. We all have a mental health in the same way that we all have physical health. What does the term mental illness mean? So mental illness refers to a wide range of mental conditions or disorders that affect your mood, thinking, and behavior. So on the spectrum of normal, you have obviously happy over here and sad over here and lots in the middle. Mental illness is in the extremes, where it's not a normal gamut of human emotion. That's what mental illness is. Now, what does the term resilience mean? Now, resilience is the capacity to withstand or recover from difficulty. So the ability to bounce back. That's what I mean by resilience. What about the term suicide? Now, it seems obvious, but suicide is the intentional act of ending one's life. And suicidal ideation is thinking about, considering, or planning suicide. So now we have an understanding of what these terms mean. So if I use them later, we know we're talking about the same thing. I hope you're following me so far. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about, this is the Khan Black Health Hour. We're talking to Black people. We're going to talk about the cultural barriers at addressing some of the issues that we have. So there are some what I call misleading mental models, things that we say to each other or we have heard that actually make it difficult to address mental health, resilience, suicide in the Black community. Black men don't cry. Men don't cry. We say that. Pray it away. You just got to pray. You just got to pray harder. And we have this concept of needing to be strong, the strong black woman syndrome. All of these things are things that have historically we've grown up with, and we either we say them explicitly or we expect them implicitly, and they're affecting us negatively. Sorry, language. Okay. Other things that are an issue is distrust in the system. Let's face it, in the black community, we are we have evidence that the establishment sometimes is systematically against us, and there is a mistrust about engaging in healthcare. And if you add on to that the stigma of the help I need is a um, mental health illness, a mental illness issue, it can be even harder to engage. There's there's a big issue with pride and shame. I think in the black community, we don't talk about health issues at all. Again, I remember my auntie saying, in the village, what you might want to do is not let your enemy know where your weaknesses are. So have we brought that into modern society when we don't have enemies in that sense, but we're not comfortable talking about health and specifically any mental health issues or traits of mental illness? Now, why are these things a problem? Because it leads to isolation. When we don't talk about it, you're by yourself, and you feel by yourself. The problem with that is that suicide, and we'll come to talk about that specifically later, is the leading cause of death for men under 50. When I read this, I was shocked and saddened. So not cancer, not heart disease, not diabetes. Suicide is the leading cause of death for men under 50. So these men who are taking their own lives are feeling alone. They don't realize that there's a community of people who love them and want to be there and help, because again, the misleading mantras, the misleading mental models are telling them, no, you're by yourself. Actually, no one else is dealing with this. It's just you. All of those things are lies and negative perceptions that lead to isolation, lead to men and people in the black community not seeking help. Black men in the UK are less likely to access mental health services, which is an issue, but are more likely to present in crisis. So the numbers are against us, the data is against us. We need to do something and address the fact that our stigma, our culture, maybe the way that we talk about it in the community is affecting us negatively. So let's talk. Why do we need to have this conversation? Because community is protective. I'm a Christian, and I believe that I am a spirit. I live in a body, and I have a soul. So from a mental point of view, that's one part of me. My body is one part of me, and my spirit is another part of me. Community is protective for all kinds of physical and mental health ills. So being around people is protective. I am fascinated by the idea of what I call God's original plan. So if you look at life before industrialization, we all lived physically close to each other. You had your uncle over there, your auntie over there. You might live in the same house with your grandmother, and all of these things were protective. And because of advances in society and industrialization, these things have been taken away. And I was watching this podcast the other day, and it was saying, if you think about it, now we're buying back the community. We would live in a house where someone would take care of our kids and would cook, and we would all share that. But now we're paying somebody to look after our kids, and paying somebody to clean our house, and paying somebody to cook our meals, maybe. And we had that when we all lived physically closer together. 1 Peter 5 says that the devil prowls around like a roaring lion, looking at who he can devour. Now, if you look at how lions hunt, what they do is they look for the isolated and weak animals because they never attack a pack. So one of the things that can happen to you is that if you isolate yourself, you make yourself vulnerable. And we're here to talk about that. We don't want to do that. James 5:16 says that if we confess our sins to each other, we get we become whole. It doesn't talk about healing. Now, I get forgiveness by confessing my sins to God. But to me, I interpret this verse as saying that there is an aspect of health that God wants me to access by talking. That's what the encouragement is. Talking to people and unburdening myself. And if I don't do that, my mental health is going to suffer. And for anybody who's saying, well, the Bible doesn't talk about mental health, I would strongly encourage you to read Psalms. I would strongly encourage you to read stories about Jonah and Elijah, who talked about being so depressed they wanted to die. So the Bible does address issues about mental health if you want to look for it. It's not a separate thing to our experience in life, and it's not something that God is not interested or involved in. God is very interested in us having good health, and that is for me spiritual, physical, and mental. Now, we're going to talk about resilience. We said resilience is the ability to bounce back. Okay, so what does resilience look like when it's good? What somebody who is resilient and has emotional resilience, what does that look like? So that person is able to name their emotions instead of numbing them. I feel like this. Again, I was reading a book about the difference between men and women. And there's a gentleman I follow called Jason Wilson who helps men try and deal with what he calls emotional incarceration. When you were in primary school, you all got those coloring sets, where different colors and you were painting. And the analogy he gives is that women are used to using all the colors in their set. But men, we tend to limit our emotional spectrum to anger or hunger. We don't want to acknowledge fear. The only one that is acceptable in society really is anger. And although that's generally how men project when they're emotional, the problem is we haven't delved deeper. And back to the coloring spectrum, a woman might be saying, oh, actually, what I need is a conversation about cyan, but all I have is green. A woman might say, well, we're talking about violet and all I have is purple. So I limit my experiences and as a man, and if I'm not intentional about saying, actually, anger might be the thing that comes to the surface, but the deeper thing is I'm hurt, I'm scared. Um, and so we need to learn to name them. My wife and I bought our children an emotional spectrum wheel, and sometimes we go through it and say, okay, well, what do you think you feel? Because good, bad, it's not helpful in terms of dealing with our emotional health. They create healthy pauses before reacting. Have you ever overreacted to something? And it's like, and in hindsight, when you're able to calm down, you're like, well, that was too much. People who are emotionally robust don't do that. They bounce back from setbacks. They lose a job, they get another job. Something bad happens, they're able to get back. It might take some time, but they get back to where they were before. They don't stay affected by the heavy load, even though they are able to acknowledge it. They're able to maintain perspective under pressure. That's a really big and important thing. That people who are emotionally intelligent and emotionally resilient are able to do. They're able to lean into supporting networks. So they recognize I'm not feeling myself. And rather than go into a room and isolate myself, I know that I need my friends. I know that I need my family. I know that I need my wife. I'm going to have that conversation. I'm going to be open and honest and vulnerable. And they hold on to hope in hard times. That's what it looks like when somebody is emotionally resilient. Now, in a nutshell, resilience looks like small daily practices, things like naming your emotions, the ability to reframe what's happening. I know that this is the fact, and I used to think about the fact like this, but I've decided to now think about the fact like this. That's reframing, breathing, reaching out and hoping forward. And the discipline to compel yourself to do this every day is the thing that will eventually lead to a life of emotional resilience. So the paradox of the word resilience is that my experience is that sometimes when people say resilience, they don't really mean the ability to bounce back. What they mean is almost like a tensed, it's not going to affect me, it's not going to affect me, it's not going to affect me. And they're not allowing themselves to feel what's happening. Um, the problem with that is that, again, that tense. If I, for instance, I am concerned, I'm tensed against racial injustice, or I'm tensed against bias. If I become aware of it, I'm more likely to overreact because I'm tensed against it. And it can look like resilience from the outside of the person, but that kind of tensing, not letting yourself feel it, increases the risk of emotional overwhelm and burnout because you're not letting the feelings go through you. Um, Depending on your how you grew up in a family, there are some families who are verbal processes and talk about their emotions and difficult things, and there are some families who don't encourage that, so you never learn to do that. Some people think of difficult emotions as a cave that you go in and there's bats and snakes and you get trapped there and you never leave. So they never enter. Whereas the more helpful way to think about difficult emotions is that they are a tunnel that you have to walk through. There is light at the end of it, but I have to deal with it. I have to face it head on. I have to walk through and get through the other side. And again, if I'm tensed against it and I don't go into it, it might look like, oh, nothing affects me and I'm resilient, but actually all I'm doing is increasing the probability that I'll snap at one point and have a breakdown, have emotional overwhelm, or become burnt out. So what does it look like when we're not coping? Okay, let's have a look. Overreacting to small stresses, a minor traffic delay, somebody calling you that you don't want, somebody shouting around you, overreacting to that, avoiding difficult conversations so as not to address any sort of tension. I'm just going to avoid it. Constant blame shifting. It's my boss. It's my wife. It's my parents. It's never taking responsibility for how we may have contributed to the situation that we're in. I think this is a really important one. I'll spend some time on it. Numbing rather than naming emotions. Again, what does that look like? Are you doom scrolling? Are you watching pornography? Are you sexually promiscuous? Are you using drugs to excess? Smoking, alcohol, illicit drugs? Are you avoiding um, challenging situations? Are you what are you, rather than dealing with something, distracting yourself? I mean, technology is great, and I think that we have to regulate our use of it because it does do something to us. For instance, the way that a lot of people are using phones nowadays, I've heard it reported as, technology and phones are pacifiers for adults. When a child is crying and you want the child to soothe, you give the child a pacifier. And if you were to audit your use of the phone, are you doing it like, are you addicted? Are you using it first thing in the morning? Are you using it last thing at night? Are you doing stuff on the phone rather than live your life? All of that stuff is just numbing. It doesn't actually deal with the problem. Are you catastrophizing? Are you able to see any hope in the future? A small financial setback, and you're not able to get out of bed for a couple of days. All of those things are signs of not coping. When things get hard, what do you do? Do you seek help or do you isolate yourself? Do you go into a dark room? Do you cut off your phone? Do you stop your social media? What does it look like when you are struggling? Are you rigid or inflexible? When plans change, are you able to go with the punches, or do you panic? Do you get angry? Because all of those things, inflexibility, are evidence maybe you're not coping as well as you think you are. And I think we have to acknowledge that what COVID taught us is that probably none of us are as good at protecting our mental health as we thought we were, because isolation and us having to be by ourselves really caused so many things to unravel. And it's important for us to recognize that. Um, so again, in short, emotional fragility often reveals itself as an overreaction, avoidance, blame, withdrawal, or unhealthy coping mechanisms. Now, I want to talk about the fact that, again, we don't have the time to deal with this at length. I believe that all of us have something in our lives that we're dealing with. You can call it being broken or trauma, all that kind of stuff. Now, some people will choose things that society has said that's wrong. And then we look at the behavior and say, that's wrong, you're wrong. I think the problem with that model is that there are some people who are broken in the same way, but they choose things that society accepts as okay. There are some people who are broken and what they choose is alcohol to excess. But there are some people who might be broken and not dealing with it and they choose exercise to excess. Or they choose going to church to excess. And all of these things are like, okay, well, this behavior is good, so they must be good. And the underlying issue is the same. So I think from a grace point of view, we want to look at the behavior, and there are things that are inherently bad. I'm not saying we excuse it. I'm just saying look deeper. Why? And let's not. They always say check out for your friends that are always laughing. Let's not assume that somebody who is doing the thing that society thinks is good, but to excess. Let's not assume that person is okay. Okay. So how can I become more emotionally resilient? These are some practical things by way of suggestion. A morning check-in. How do I feel when I wake up in the morning? Um, Write it down. Be intentional about naming it. Gratitude. Gratitude is so powerful. It's difficult to um, be low consistently and have gratitude consistently at the same time. Breathing breaks. There are whole seminars about breathing techniques that you can use to help you regulate your emotions. Because again, I believe that how God designed us, because we are intertwined, is that my body can help me regulate my mind and vice versa. Connection habit. Let's be intentional about reaching out to people and texting and calling, not just saying, "Oh, you're right, mate," but "How are you? How are you doing?" And when somebody asks you that question, being honest. Let's be intentional about putting some boundaries. We can probably all acknowledge that there are some behaviors that we're engaged in that are not helpful to us. So let's limit it. Let's be intentional. Because one of the things I know for myself, I am great at fooling myself. It's just 10 minutes. It's just half an hour or on Instagram or whatever. And then 2 hours later. So I need to be better in my own life at taking care of myself and saying, no, Ayo, this is not good for you. So I'm going to set a timer. You can do that on your phone. Exercise as a medicine. Moving your body has so much evidence in terms of improving your mental health. If you think about it, when you are feeling low, the things that generally happen is that we go dark in terms of lighting, like curtains closed, we go quiet and we go still. So if we're intentional about doing the opposite, light, sound, that includes talking, includes music, includes community and movement. Those things are so protective. Daily reflection and prayer on purpose, talking to God. This is how I'm feeling. He wants to know. He created you. He loves you. And a self-talk audit. Have you looked at, if you were to, if they're creating these AI platforms now that you can be in a room and it's listening to your conversation. And at the end of it, it would give you a summary of what you said. If you had one of those things following you around all day, would the majority of the things that you said in general and specifically about yourself, would they be positive? Would they be good things? Oh, I'm so stupid. Oh, I'm so slow. Oh, I can never get anything right. Um, would they be positive? Would they be like that? And if you realize, oh my goodness, with my mouth, I am saying things that are pointing me in the negative direction, then we need to arrest that and we need to change and start saying positive things because our mouth is um it's almost like a rudder. It's what we say can help the direction and change the direction of our life and where we're going. So that's resilience. But now we're going to talk about suicide specifically. Now, there's a big stigma around suicide in most communities and especially in the Black community. These are the things that we say and think. It's so selfish when we hear about somebody who has taken their life. Or we create an environment, we say implicitly or explicitly, we don't talk about that in our family, whether it's suicide or mental health struggles. You just need to pray. You just need to pray harder. And I want to be clear. I am a Christian. I believe in the power of prayer. I believe that God is a miraculous God. And I believe that God answers prayer and can solve everything. And I believe that there are things that the Bible has put down as principles to live that help me understand that there are some things that I need to. So, for instance, no amount of prayer is going to combat my physical health if everything I eat is McDonald's every day and I don't exercise. Prayer is not going to solve that problem. You understand what I'm saying? There is a certain amount of responsibility when it comes to input equaling output, and I'm auditing myself and saying, well, I don't feel so healthy, but I haven't drank any water. I haven't eaten fresh fruit and veg. I haven't increased my protein intake, and all I'm eating is processed carbs. I can pray about it, but there's something that I need to do. Similarly, when it comes to my mental health, there are things that I have to acknowledge that I may be contributing to if it's going in the wrong direction. What am I listening to? Who am I talking to? What am I watching? And I want to be clear, that's mental health, which is a distinct entity to mental illness. If I'm in a situation where I feel like I'm suffering from mental illness, I need to see a professional. In the same way that if I broke my leg, I wouldn't I would pray, but I would also see a professional. I hope you understand what I'm saying. There's a difference between mental health and mental illness. Black people don't do that. I mean, I understand the rationale for, when you talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. For a lot of our community, for a lot of time, we were in survival mode, and there might not have been the mental space to address these things, but I don't know necessarily that that helped us. How many of us are able to look back at ourselves before we started dealing with our mental health or the therapy, or even look at our parents and grandparents and say, "Oh, okay, I can see that this was because there were things that you might not have necessarily had the opportunity or the vocabulary to deal with. But just because that's the culture that I've grown up in or been around, that doesn't mean that I have to continue to participate or engage in that." So I've people I've had a conversation with, excuse me, a few people who have struggled with suicidal ideation. And it's something I've had to grapple with because it's not something I have struggled with. And in my life, I've been aware of people who have kind of brought it to my attention. And I have to be honest, I haven't always responded in hindsight in the best way. I'm regretful about that. One of the things I think I struggled with is this idea of when we look at somebody who might have taken their life, the underlying thing is that, and I think that what somebody mentioned to me that they wanted people to know is that it's not that they want to die, It's just that what they are dealing with is pain. In the same way that, again, if you broke your leg, if you fell down the stairs, if you were suffering with pain, you'd want some relief. And when it's a deep psychological pain, the problem is that the continuing to live in this pain is untenable. So it's not the dying as a direction that's a desire. It's that I don't want to be in the pain anymore. I just don't want to be in pain anymore. And that is helping me reframe my mindset when it comes to thinking about people who have struggled with suicidal ideation or people who I know have taken their life. That's what they want us to understand. I don't want to die. I just don't want to be in pain. Now, if you're on this call live or you're listening to this and this is you, there are some things that I want to say to you. This is something that, as a community, we want you to understand you are not alone. I know it feels like that, but you're not alone. Your feelings are valid, but they're not the full truth. This moment, whatever you're dealing with, is not going to define your future. It doesn't have to define your future. My wife and I have a saying, tomorrow is always going to come. Sometimes it can feel really dark, but tomorrow is always going to come. Even if there's potentially something negative going to happen tomorrow, then the next day will come. This moment doesn't have to define you. Reaching out is actually a sign of courage. It's not a sign of weakness. And those of us who are around you and love you, we would love it if you would speak to us. God hasn't abandoned you. So don't allow that lie to circle around your head. God hasn't abandoned you. Do you know how much you mean to us? Your presence matters more than you know. You know what it would do to us if you weren't here? So to anybody who's listening, who is struggling with this, I hope you've understood and heard, whether you know me personally or whether this is a representation of what your wife is saying or what your husband is saying or what your children are saying or what your parents are saying or your family. You mean so much to us. Your presence matters more than you know. And rather than, because everybody struggles with this, when you see a problem and it's massive when you're at the foot of a mountain, rather than look at, well, how am I going to solve this whole problem? Let's focus on the next step. What is the next appropriate thing to do? And let's keep going. That's how people solve problems. That's how people get over things. That's how people get from A to B. You don't have to have all the answers right now. But what would be the first thing to do? Let's focus on them. Let's bring our focus down. So, as a community, we're listening to this. We're on the Khan Black Health Hour. Maybe it's not something that you've ever struggled with. Okay, but maybe you know somebody who has, or you want to equip yourself in case you meet somebody. What can we do? Let's normalize conversations about mental health. Why not? We talk about almost everything else at length. Let's normalize the conversation. Let's check in and not just catch up. You know, in the context of marriage, my wife and I have been married for 16 years now. And one of the things that we talk to people who have been married for less long is that even though you're living together, you can say a lot of things and not never actually talk. So it's possible to be around people all the time and not really say anything of substance. So rather than just talk and how were you watching TV, let's really talk. And yes, you might want to be discerning about who you do that with, but trust me, there'll be somebody in your circle who would love the opportunity to talk to you about how you feel. Let's challenge the stigma publicly. Next time somebody's, oh, that's so selfish, let's deal with it. I was listening to a preacher years ago, and he used this analogy. When somebody dies of cancer or dies of um, diabetes complications or heart attacks, we don't blame them. We say the cancer killed them. And a way to think about this is somebody who is struggling with a mental health. They are, sorry, no, somebody struggling with a mental illness. They are ill. So isn't it the mental health that killed them? No, excuse me. I am doing it. Isn't it their mental illness that killed them? We wouldn't say it about cancer. We wouldn't say it about COPD. We wouldn't say it about liver disease. Isn't it the mental illness? Something to think about. We need to strengthen intergenerational connections. Those of us who are, so I'm firmly an uncle nowadays. I'm in my mid-40s. Those of us who are older, let's have honest conversations with our younger um, brothers and sisters. Let's be honest about our struggles. Let's do that. Let's create support networks beyond crisis. I'm loving what I'm seeing on social media nowadays. There are so many things. I'm on LinkedIn, and there's a colleague that I know called Jesse who started an organization called Thursday Night Jollof. He is a barber in London, and every Thursday he will bring people to his barber and normalizing the conversation about mental health in men. Because one of the stigmas is that men do talk, we just generally don't talk when there's women there. So if we create these communities of men talking, we can who knows what we could achieve. Somebody sent me something today. It's called A Dialogue of Equals, a podcast about Black men and their mental health. I like the momentum that we are developing. You know, my church has started a men's ministry. After this, I'm going to the men's meeting. We'll play table tennis for a bit and we'll have a conversation. You know, it's important for us to create these networks. Let's model it, model practical help, not just words. What does that mean? If you see somebody struggling, what can you take off their plate? Could you cook them a meal? Could you pick up their kids? Could you cut somebody's hair? Could you do their daughter's hair? Could you take them shot? Like, what can you do? Let's look for opportunities to help practically. And let's celebrate resilience stories when somebody is dealing with something, not just we in our Black communities, often we celebrate the struggle. We glorify the struggle as if it's the only thing that matters. But no, what we want to do is seeing the conversation about people bouncing back and getting back to where they were, not just in the moment struggling. So, you know, I'm almost at the end. I want to take the opportunity to get you guys to pledge as a community. So you're listening to this live or you're listening to this on the recording. I want you to say after me. So if you want to unmute yourself, that's fine. But say after me. I'm going to say it and you're going to say it. Today, we choose life. This is our community pledge. Today, we choose life. We will check in, not just catch up. We will challenge stigma with compassion. We will listen deeply without judgment. We will carry each other's burdens with love. We are stronger together. And above all, we will protect hope. I like to think of hope like buoyancy. Have you ever seen those when you go to the beach or swimming pool, those really light balls that they play like water sports with? What I find really interesting is the concept of buoyancy from a physics point of view. That ball, if you submerge it in the water, there is because what's in the ball is lighter than the water, you're creating a pressure underneath it. And the level to which you submerge it increases the pressure. So when you release it, it shoots up and bounces in and shoots in the air. That's how I like to think about hope. Hope is that thing that regardless of how deep or how much pressure we're under, gives us the ability to say, no, this is not me, this is not my life, this is not how things are going to end. This is not the definition of my life moving forward, and gives us the ability to do the thing or withstand from a time point of view to get us back to shooting up. There's a whole message in that. So, and if you're listening to this and you are struggling, what can you do? So there are a few things that you can do that I want you to signpost you to. Have a conversation with somebody, talk to somebody, and your friends, family, wife, talk to somebody because isolation is killing us. And I mean that literally. If you need professional help, have a conversation with your GP. Google the IAPT, Improving Access to Psychological Therapies, or just Google therapies. One of the things I talk about even at work is some people come to work and they're dealing with where they are emotionally and it's impacting their physical symptoms. And I'll encourage them, have a conversation with your GP about talking therapies. But I don't know where your financial situation is. You can just try and find a therapist. One of the things I would always encourage everybody to do is take responsibility for your health, physical as well as mental. Research your local mental health services. Khan has, I know that they've announced before about having specific services where crisis help and things that you can, culturally specific. If you want to talk to somebody that you're struggling with, there's an organization called Mind. That's their number. And if it's urgent, if you really need to speak to somebody right now, there are some things, here are some numbers that you can access. Samaritans, NHS 111, you can text. Shout is an organization where 24-hour confidential trained crisis. And if you are concerned that somebody is in immediate damage or danger of hurting themselves, call 999. That's the steps. I'm hoping that this conversation will help us intervene before it comes to 999, before it comes to having to speak to somebody in an emergency. So, in conclusion, we all have mental health. It's a completely different thing to mental illness. There are ways to improve your emotional resilience, and I've gone through that. So please have a look at the video. And again, it's just a brief conversation. There are whole weekend seminars about this topic specifically. We can't cover all of it today. And this I think is a really important point. In general, as human beings, we give each other grace in to other people who struggle in the same way as us. So if my problem is I drink too much and I see somebody else who's drinking too much, I'll probably give them some compassion, but I might not give somebody compassion who eats too much or whose problem is pornography or whose problem is doom scrolling and stuff. And I think we just need to acknowledge that and give more grace. Everybody is struggling with something. And we've all heard of, really prominent people who are struggling with something and took their life. And everybody afterwards is always scratching their head thinking, oh, was there more that I could do? Suicidal ideation is not about being selfish. It's about avoiding pain. It's important for us to reframe that. And lastly, we need to take better care of ourselves. Like I said before, community is protective. This phrase for me is very layered. We, that includes me, I need to take better of myself. I need to take better care of you. We need to take better care of each other. And that's, I think how I'm going to leave it. That's my charge to you. We need to take better care of each other. Thank you for listening. And I think I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Ayo. Very, very helpful insights about this topic of suicide and resilience. I'd like to summarize briefly, especially for those of us that joined in late, about what Dr. Ayo spoke about. Initially, he started up with on the prevalence of suicide and impact it has on society. Spoke about signs of not coping, such as avoidance and self-sabotage and numbing your emotions, people going to addiction and all sorts. And also the paradox of resilience and how internal suppression and avoiding your emotions can cause further down spiral. And he spoke about the importance of naming these emotions and talking yourself through it, seeking support as well. I really like the aspect of the daily practices you can do to help with um, when you're burnt out or dealing with a lot of stresses, like talking, reaching out, holding on to hope. And you spoke about emotional resilience. And there's also the importance of collaboration with faith leaders, and I think that's very important to highlight, especially in this day and age. Let us not segregate the importance of this community and faith and spiritual leaders and how they can help um, bring awareness to mental health issues and support these individuals as well. And you also spoke about how one can become emotionally resilient. You spoke about meditation, prayer, exercise, and movement, and um, even the importance of community as well, and how we should be more compassionate with each other. Let's normalize the conversation about suicide and challenge the stigma. So let's go into questions. There are then a few questions we need to speak about. Firstly, we want we one of our one of the attenders, I think Andrea, she discussed an issue with her son who has been suffering from PTSD since the age of 6. That's a very young age and struggling to seek support from camps, and they're not able to provide help. He's been through so much trauma, um, and she spoke about how she she went to the emergency department and they didn't take her seriously or take him seriously. And they spoke about the stigma of being in a Black community. Um, and you also spoke about this, and she highlighted that they should pray it away. And if you're not a Christian, um, when she sought for support within her local community. Do you have any sort of advice you can give?
Yeah, I think looking at the comments, I think there's two issues. So there's Andrew who's talking about his son who's 27, and I think Key talking about his son who's 6. So the first thing is that, guys, even with the best intentions, the healthcare service doesn't get it right all the time. So I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry that you've had an experience that has been negative and hasn't been supportive. I'm very sorry about that. As a representative of somebody who works in NHS, I'm sorry. Specifically about I mean, you're right in that there's lots of data to suggest that from a um, healthcare outcomes point of view, Black pain, Black's issues, there's a lack of compassion when Black people articulate problems. It's the same reason what is contributing to why Black women are 4 times more likely to die in childbirth than white women. So I get it and I see it. And I think it's also important for us to be um to really think about, okay, so from a responsibility point of view, if this is my son or my child, I'm going to do everything that I can do. So yes, I might go to somewhere and they might not necessarily appreciate it, but I think that I might go back, or I might have another conversation with a GP, or I might then speak to maybe Khan about finding advocates for Black mental health specifically, because if I'm speaking to somebody who might not necessarily see me as needing the support because of my background or where I'm coming from, I still need the support. So I'm going to have to find a way of pushing past that. And getting an ally. So maybe, like I said, a GP. Other things are, I mean, other things are there other services that I can access myself? Like I said, talking therapy, you don't have to wait for a GP to do that. Are there reputable places that I can check online to say, well, what is the health? Because I'm also of the opinion that a lot of the way that we look at mental health from a modern medicine point of view isn't necessarily helpful. We used to think about our mental health struggles are things that we went through, and with the aim of getting back, and a lot of things change in terms of the paradigm. So sometimes we're owning um, these struggles are not necessarily been able to aim to get back to a what we call a euthymic, which is a normal level of emotional stability. So if it was my son, what I would do is I would keep knocking on doors, and I would keep going till I find somebody who's able to help me. Specifically about the PTSD, that sounds really challenging. And again, I can't imagine what it's like to deal with a child who is dealing with these sorts of things. But it is an increasing thing in our society, and we're noticing that our psychological resilience is reducing from a generational point of view. I think that trauma is a specific issue, and I think my advice would be to seek professional help, and engage proactively and regularly. Even children who aren't dealing with this struggle with taking care of themselves. Can't tell you how many times I have to remind my children to brush their teeth or to shower or to cream themselves or to comb their hair. So I can't imagine what it would be like for a child who's dealing with something as heavy as this. And they may not always understand that the encouragement of you pushing them to maybe face and deal with something that's uncomfortable is for their good. So, as a parent, again, I would be proactive and I would be intentional about consistently knocking on doors, making sure that I get the help that my child needs. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ayo. Thank you, Andrea, for clarifying. My thoughts goes out to your son. And like Dr. Ayo said, there's lots of support out there for you and your son, and Key as well. Let's go to the next question, which is, I mean, you spoke about some of these questions, answered some of these questions already in your presentation. You said, how do we recognize the early warning signs of suicidal thoughts in ourselves or loved ones?
But really good question. I think obviously, if it's yourself, most of us never think about what we're thinking about. So we just allow our thoughts to run through our mind, never really auditing them, because your thoughts can come from different places depending on what you eat, what you're watching on TV. That's the power of marketing and suggestion. So if I show you a a burger enough times, you're going to be like, I want a burger, and you might not know why. So I think auditing your inputs is really important. What am I listening to? What am I watching? What am I listening? What am I talking about? What am I hearing? And if a thought comes across your mind that isn't in keeping with your values, I think it's worth arresting and saying, okay, where did that come from? And there's a phrase in the Bible that says, "You bring all thoughts, you cast all thoughts down and bring them to the knowledge of Christ." So from in my own mind, if there's a thought that's going through my mind, I that I'm not happy with, the phrase is, you can't stop birds flying around your head, but you can stop them making a nest in your hair. A really useful thing is the power of using your voice. So, for instance, when let's say you were counting in your mind, 1 to 100. If I then challenge you to start saying the alphabet, as soon as you spoke, you would stop thinking the numbers. So myself, when I find myself thinking something I might not want to be thinking, I say no out loud, or I address it where like no, and I might say, I might, for me personally, I find a phrase in the Bible that addresses that thing. No, I'm a child of God, or no, God loves me, or no, I have value, all these kinds of things, because I am being intentional about the slippery slope of allowing something to lodge and move down. With regards to other people, I think it's just listening for cues. So when you notice that somebody isn't taking care of themselves, that's a worry. There's some friends that we have that we might see them out, but they never let us come to their house. That might be an issue. What are they thinking about the situation? And that for me is already quite extreme. But maybe somebody saying things, they've started to say things negatively about themselves. They've started to withdraw, because as we talked about in the presentation, if we don't just catch up, but we really check in, we will say, do you know what, bro? Or, you know what, sis? I've noticed over the last couple of days, you're not yourself. You know, is there anything you want to talk about? How are you? What's happening? because all of those things might help to stop the situation becoming more serious than it is. And obviously, pray. Obviously, let's do that.
Thank you, Dr. Ayo. So you did also answer the question of how you can support someone who has attempted suicide um, or expressing suicidal ideations, which is one of the
Yeah,
questions someone
yeah. I
asked.
mean, I think specifically I think it's twofold. So the first thing is from an emotional resilience point of view, emotional intelligence point of view, I have to regulate myself first. I can't go into that situation being judgy or being thinking about myself or because I'm likely to, do or say the wrong thing. What I need to do is recognize that this person is struggling. The purpose of me being here is helping them. So there's something called the ministry of presence. When somebody is really struggling, especially when it's really, really deep, just being there is really important. We talked about listening without judgment. One of the things that, because some people in a situation where they're having these thoughts that they know that they don't want to have, they might be ashamed. So what you don't want to do, especially with men, if they take the courage of opening up and being transparent, and they find something that's not a compassionate reaction, then we'll climb up again, and we don't want to do that. So how can we listen the emotion? How can we listen from a compassionate place? How can we just be there? If something is really deep, actually, you don't need to say very much. The deeper it is, the less words you use. Um, and making sure that when I'm in that situation, I have regulated myself first so that I can be of use to them.
Very, very key. Thank you so much. Um, I also want to talk about this question about how you can support a child going through mental illness or suicide, and especially as he had expressed her son's challenges. I know Zana put in a different support groups, especially in the UK. I think that's very helpful. We should look at it, a number of them. But then, yeah, this issue of children's mental health, it's important. And I really want to highlight the importance of community. I think us as an adult would play an important role in the child's development. Dr. Ayo, do you have anything else to add?
No, I agree with you 100%. I think that community is really protective, and I think that we neglect it at to our own detriment. We talked about intergenerational connections, whether it be church or community groups or parties and stuff. Actually looking around, interacting, looking to see, okay, is this person okay? Rather than just, okay, I'm here to have fun. Being intentional about, okay, how can I be of service in my community, specifically in the context of making sure that somebody knows that they can come and talk to me if they're struggling with their mental health. I think that's really important, specifically with a child. I think, again, regulating yourself, because sometimes when children are dealing with things that they're struggling with, they because they're also learning how to deal with their own emotions, they might say or do things, and it can seem like the purpose of it is to get a rise out of you and to get a reaction. And if you react inappropriately, it can make it difficult for the child to open up again. So there's way again, regulate yourself. I'm learning a lot about that in parenting myself, and just okay, so listening past the thing. There was something that I was listening to before, and one of the child psychologists was talking about not specifically trauma, but she was saying a normal teenager who says to you, "Just get out of my room." That is, they're often saying the opposite of what they want. They don't want you to leave. So as a parent, what I have to do is again regulate myself and realize what they're actually saying. They're in pain. What they need is more of me rather than for me to leave. So specifically in that situation, the response might be, "I love you. I love you. I'm not going to leave. I'm right here." Or if it's potentially going to escalate, okay, I'm right outside the door. I'm not leaving. I'm going to stay here. Because again, unfortunately, because children are learning to deal with these heavy, difficult emotions, they may say or do something that's the opposite of what they mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so another question is, why do many Black people feel dismissed and not taken seriously when they go see GP or hospital about mental health? And me being a psychiatric doctor, I can only imagine how difficult it is for people of different races and culture to be dismissed. And we're emphasizing on equality and diversity, especially in the NHS now. So, and there are different services that are available,
Yeah.
tailored to people's needs and differences and social cultural needs, especially. So, in terms of mental health, it's very difficult and tricky.
Yeah.
What do you think, Dr.
Yeah, I
Ayo?
know, I agree 100%. I think the answer is twofold.
Mhm.
So there is an internal and an external thing. So Eleanor Roosevelt said, nobody can make you feel inferior without your consent. And one of the things that, because in the Black community, we're not necessarily adept at having these conversations about our own mental health, and maybe internally, it's something that I might not be at ease with, acknowledging the fact that I'm not at ease. So in that situation, if there's any opposition at all, I might be reticent and move back. And then, okay, well, because of the fact that I haven't either gone in with confidence or with the understanding of my own self-worth and the ability to advocate for myself. Because if I have that, there's a degree to which it doesn't really matter what the person on the other end is saying. I'm still able to respectfully and calmly advocate that there's something that I need and they haven't understood that. So, for instance, I remember years ago, not years ago, I needed a letter from my GP. I can't remember what for. And he was like, "Oh, we've got this problem, and it takes ages to this and that, and you've only got 10 minutes." Now, sometimes people say things, and this is not about GP, this is just about human beings. Sometimes people say things and they think what they're saying is reasonable. But again, I'm an advocate for myself, and I've just come in. So if what you're telling me is that what you need is 10 minutes, so I sat down and said, well, we've got 8 minutes. And I wasn't aggressive. And then we stopped, and I stopped talking because I have learned how to advocate for myself. So that's one thing. I need to be in a situation where I can calmly say, this is where I am. This is what I am feeling. This is what I feel that I need. And then we also have to acknowledge that we're dealing with humans, and we know that there are some systemic issues and some bias issues and stuff. And what I would do in a situation is, if I go into a interaction with healthcare and I feel dismissed, the first thing I have to ask myself is this feeling real or is it me? Because it might be me. Now, if it's not me, then I will address it and then say, I don't think you've understood what I'm saying. And again, I don't have to be rude. I don't have to be aggressive, but I will advocate for myself and say, I'm really sorry, but I don't feel like we've got to the bottom. I don't think we've got to an answer. And if we get to the end and I have to leave, I'll come back or I'll find another GP, or because most GP practices aren't single um deep doctors anymore. They're in lots of groups. So I might speak to somebody else. And if it's a hospital, I will calmly and respectfully escalate and ask to speak to more and more people so that I I can speak to somebody who I feel has understood what I'm saying. I hope that makes sense. I think it's internal and external.
Yeah. Also, we have charities like the Caribbean and African Health Network that you
Yeah.
can reach out to. They're very supportive as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, straightforward question about vitamin D deficiency linked to depression. I've heard, yeah, research has said that vitamin D
Yeah, yeah,
deficiency.
I've heard that as well. Vitamin D, I've heard some people talk about it as a super vitamin. It can be at the root of a lot of ills, you
Yeah.
know. So yes, I would advocate increasing your vitamin D intake, especially as we are going into our darker months and we're not getting the sunshine.
Okay, we're wrapping up now. We can wrap up with this final question about daily habits to protect our mental health and build resilience, which is something you presented as well to
Yeah.
remind everyone.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the thing that I have learned talking to people is that most people value intensity over consistency, meaning that we would rather do something big periodically than doing something small every day. But in almost every area of life, the way to move forward is small, consistent steps rather than big, small steps. So how does that pertain to our mental health? Um, if I am not careful, and impress on myself the discipline to do some of these things, what may happen is when I'm well and everything's happy and it's fine, everything is good, but there might be an issue where um, things happen and I'm having to deal with it. And because I haven't developed the habit of taking care of myself, I start to slip. So we talked about a daily morning check-in with yourself. How do I feel? Prayer, journaling. I didn't say that. That's really good. Um, um, intentionally checking in. Exercise. There's so much to say. You could, sleep, what you're eating, all of these things that you can do daily help with your general health, but specifically your mental health. And if you think about it as an investment in your future, and the dividend is I am well 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, then that's how I would think about it, especially for men, because men like to think about investments in a way that's different to women maybe.
Thank you so much. Everyone is also contributing. Thank you, Sana, June, Andrea, on their different ways they can help boost their mental health, taking walks, their local libraries, leisure centers, religious centers. Um, and yeah, one final thought. He continued to describe her situation with her son and how the trauma that he experienced with bullying and murder of a close loved one.
Mm.
I really want to empathize with you. This is a very difficult situation, but there's, like Dr. Ayo has emphasized, there's hope. Keep
Mm.
seeking out for support. It's a sign
Yeah.
of courage. And there's always light at the end. The child has a lot of developmental stage to go through, and
Yeah.
he's growing up. And with the right support, he will go through this situation and come
Yeah.
out victorious.
I mean, specifically in situations like that, Key, I would say reach out to Khan. Reach
Yeah,
out. So when it's a specific issue, because it's difficult for us to speak on specific issues on the general platform like this, but something like this, please reach out to Khan, and I'm sure that they'll be able to guide you in the right direction. And maybe somebody from Khan can get Key's details and contact her after the
yes.
presentation.
And thank you so much, everyone, for engaging in this interaction. This is an ongoing conversation. It doesn't end. So thank you. Tune in for next health hour. Sam, I will hand over to you now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sarah and Dr. Ayo. What a riveting and fully informed session you've provided us both today. Greatly appreciate the time that you have spent with us this morning. Just before I start my quick closing slide presentation, I'd like to just issue a formal apology to everyone on the call on Zoom who witnessed the inappropriate language used in the chat. I do apologize for that. We take our security very important, and we have addressed the individual and addressed the issue, and the individual has been permanently blocked and gotten rid of from the chat. So again, apologies for that, people. So now I'm just going to quickly go through these slides. Just bear with me as I share my screen, tell you about the interesting and fun stuff going on here at Khan. So same time, same place next week, we'll be having Health Hour again. The session will be shared on socials. Please feel free to invite your friends and family. The topic will be released in a few days' time, so do look out for that, and I hope to see you all there. Learning again with one of our wonderful doctors and one of our wonderful hosts. And yeah, same time, same place next week, and I'll be there, and I'll see you there as well. Next slide. The gala is coming up, the Black History Month Gala. This is happening on the 11th of October from 6:30 p.m., where we'll be celebrating the Black champions within Greater Manchester. So if you know anyone that, has gone above and beyond for the community, or who continuously goes above and beyond, but no one really seems to give them any accolades or any praise or any flowers because they're not well known, or they're not in the spaces that they are well recognized, please do recommend them to come to our gala, or nominations of course, but do come to our gala and celebrate them together with us. It'll be a very important day to celebrate the community, and it's happening during Black History Month. What another wonderful time to celebrate. There's going to be raffles available. There's going to be a 3-course meal available. There's going to be lots of entertainment and lots of important things that we will be highlighting for the community, especially this year that's been quite quick and quite eventful. On Tuesday, we'll be having the media and comms engagement, or media and comms event, as we like to call it. Again, this is just to enable anyone within Greater Manchester who is keen on amplifying Black voices. If you're a content creator, if you're a marketer, if you're a copywriter, if you're a bloggist, if you are someone that, has a voice within the community or wants to understand how the voices of the community can be better amplified, this is your event for you. It's a free event. Please scan the QR code or use the link in the chats to register to these events, and you would be able to come and attend this event. This is, again, as I said, it's a free event, and you're all fully free to welcome to attend. We're also inviting you to the Black History Month Civic Launch event happening in the Gorton Monastery. This is taking place on the 25th of September. It's going to be happening from 6 p.m. The doors will open from 6 p.m. and it will end around 8:30 p.m. Again, it'll be a wonderful evening. There might be a fashion show there. There may or may not be. I don't want to give anything away. But yeah, do feel free to come down and celebrate Black History Month Civic Launch with us in just a few weeks, the 25th of September. And I'll be looking forward to seeing you there. If you do see me, do come and say hi and just say, yeah, you heard the health hour and you decided to come down. I would greatly appreciate that. There are stall opportunities for those that want to showcase their business or showcase their work to the public. Please feel free to use the link or scan this QR code to register your stall. Just lastly, on the 24th of September, on a Wednesday from 4 p.m., the Empowered Voices panel within Cairn and Manchester will be taking part, or rather having an event that's focused on the impact of domestic violence or domestic abuse on survivors and children living with trauma. This is quite a serious topic within our community, and we want to make sure that everyone feels they're in a safe space, or they feel encouraged to know where they can go to get support. If you have any more questions, please do contact advocacy@cairn.org.uk. Do look out for more information about this event and other events on our socials and our newsletter. And again, if you do have any questions regarding today's session, please do email health@cairn.org.uk. Just want to say a big, massive thank you, everyone, for sticking through us with this session today. It's been quite a heavy but very informative one. Please do take care of yourselves. As Dr. Ayo suggested, we are a community. We're a group of people that rely on each other, and please don't feel neglected or don't feel unable to reach out to those around you. And thank you very much again for tuning in. Have a wonderful evening.
Welcome to our Caribbean and African Targeted Health Improvement Program, CATHIP Health Hour. The Caribbean and African Health Network, CARN, along with its national partners, are incredibly pleased to continue to bring to you targeted health and well-being education delivered by Caribbean and African doctors. These health hours are all about empowering, educating and giving space to Black people so our communities can look after themselves better. Every Saturday, our Black GPs or consultants present on those health and well-being topics that affect you, your family members and friends. Some weeks will vary and will include other panel members such as pharmacists, specialist nurses and faith leaders. Our health hours cover a range of topics and include mental health, heart health, women's health, reproductive and sexual health issues, men's health, respiratory problems, cancer, sickle cell and many more. We have not forgotten to include within our health hours the many societal, cultural, religious and racial challenges that can go hand in hand with health problems and influence how we should respond to meet health and well-being needs. The sessions are designed for you, and we want you to use the time to listen, learn, share your experiences and ask questions to our Black doctors. During every session, we will gather your feedback so we can continue to respond to the needs of our Black community. To request any particular topic, please email health@cairn.org.uk. We encourage you to invite others to our health hour sessions. Spread the word in our community.